Hello and welcome to Section 8, Managing and Configuring Desktop Pools. In this section, we're going to look at creating our desktop pools for the end users to be able to connect and to start using their virtual desktop machines. So what we're going to learn in this section? In this section, we're going to create several different types of desktop pool, starting with a Windows 7 full clone desktop pool. Next, we will create two additional Windows 7 desktop pools. One will be used as a linked clone desktop image, and the other will be a manual desktop pool using an existing virtual desktop machine. The next desktop pool we will create will be for a Windows 10 virtual desktop and will be built using an instant clone image. Now that we've created a number of desktop pools, the next task we will undertake is to entitle end users to have access to the pools and the desktops within them, before then looking at how we manage those pools. Next, we will look at how to manage the persistent disks when using linked clones so that we can keep them during management operations. And then we will create one final desktop pool for our hardware accelerated graphics desktop. To finish the section, we will connect to Horizon View and look at how to connect to the virtual desktops within the pools. So let's now move on to our first video of the section and let's create the first desktop pool in the example lab environment. In this video, we're going to create a desktop pool which will use a full clone image of the Windows 7 Gold image. This pool will also have a persistent assignment, meaning that a user will effectively own this desktop. So now we're going to create our first desktop pool. So from our admin desktop, we've launched our browser. We've gone to our hzn7-cs1 pvolab.com admin, and that's launched our Horizon 7 Administrator console, which we can see here. So the first thing we're going to do is from the inventory section on the left-hand side, we're going to scroll down to Catalog, expand the option for Catalog, and then click on Desktop Pools. Now we see our desktop pools configuration screens, so we can add, we can sort out our entitlements, the status of the pools, access groups, and then we can view unentitled machines and policies. So as you can see, we don't have any pools just yet, so we're going to add a pool by clicking the Add button. And in this particular case, we're going to add our Windows 7 full clone persistent desktop. So the first thing we're going to do is see our desktop pool definition and the type. So we're going to create an automated desktop pool in this example, and there's some text here that tells you about what an automated desktop pool uses and also the supported features. So we can have this as an instant clone, we can use Vcenter virtual machines, Composer, Blast as our protocol, PCA-IP and persona management. So we're going to click next to continue. Next we have our user assignment. So is this going to be a dedicated desktop or a floating desktop? As we said, this is going to be a dedicated desktop, and we're also going to check the box for enable automatic assignment. So that means that when the user logs in, they'll automatically be assigned a desktop from desktops within the pool, and then that will become their desktop. So the next time they log in, they will get the same desktop session. If we remove that, then basically we will point them to a desktop. So we're going to enable the automatic assignment. We're going to click next to continue. Next, we have our Vcenter server settings. So here we can choose whether we were going to do instant clones, Composer linked clones, or full virtual machines. So in this example, we're going to do full virtual machines. So we said it's going to be a full clone. So we click the radio button for full virtual machines. You also see some of the settings down the side will change that relate to the type of settings we need to configure. So we're going to go for full virtual machine and then click next to continue. Now we need to give this desktop pool an ID. So in this example, we're going to call it Win7 _ persistent _ FC for full clones. What you need to note is when you do enter an ID, there are only certain characters you can use. So you can use lowercase a through to Z, uppercase A through to Z, the numbers 0 to 9, the hyphen sign, and the underscore sign. Anything else you can't use. Now we need to give this a display name. So what you need to be aware of in the display name is this is what a user will see when they log into their Horizon client. So we're going to call this Windows 7 persistent desktop. So the idea here is to give it a friendly name. Access group, we don't have access groups set up, and for description, we're just going to give this a quick description, so we just use the same as our display name for this example. When you're happy to configure all those options, click next to continue. And now we see our desktop pool settings screen. So there's quite a few settings here that we're going to go through. So the first one is whether or not the pool is enabled or disabled. So we make sure that the pool is enabled. Then we see this connection server restrictions. So if we click the browse button here, we can actually put some restrictions on the connection server. So this is our tags. So we can configure tags for specific groups. So if you remember back when we installed our security server and paired it with our replica server, we gave that a tag of external, so we know where that group of users is coming from. So I could restrict those tags on this particular desktop pool setting to external. So there is our external tag that we set up. So this desktop pool can be accessed from the connection server only with these selected tags. So if you don't meet that tag, then that's not going to work. So for this, we're just going to leave that as no restriction. So that means this desktop pool can be accessed from any connection server rather than tie it down to a specific connection server. Next, we have our remote settings. So we have our remote machine power policy, and we have a number of options on here. First of all is take no power action, so basically do nothing. Second one is ensure machines are always powered on, so that means the virtual desktops are always powered on. Suspend means that they're suspended, and power off means that they're powered off. And this is what happens at user log off. So if we click the question mark here, we can see here is an option that tells you more information about that particular setting. So the other thing to note here is suspend is not available for NVIDIA Grid Virtual GPU. So just make a note of that you won't be able to suspend a machine if you're using that particular feature. Next, we have the automatically log off after disconnect. So this is basically when a user disconnects rather than logs off, what happens? So in this case, automatically log off is going to be never. So if a user disconnects from their session, it won't log them off. We could choose that to immediately. So the minute you disconnect, you also log off. And then we have the option for after. And then we can say, so if they disconnect and they don't reconnect within 120 minutes, they're going to get logged off. So we're just going to leave that as never, so that if I disconnect, I don't get logged off. And then the next one is allow users to reset or restart their machines. That's yes or no. So basically what you need to watch out for if you were using linked clones is this isn't just a case of pressing the reset button. This is going to regenerate a brand new machine. So next we have our remote display protocol settings, and the default display protocol will be VMware Blast by default. We're just going to set this to PC over IP for now. And then we have the option to allow users to choose their protocol, either yes or no. So that basically means is when they connect using the Horizon client, they can choose whether they have RDP, PC over IP, or Blast. Now, you may want to do that if you know you have external remote users who are going to connect via the internet, particularly when using PC over IP. And the reason being is if you connect to somewhere that may be blocking the PC over IP port, that's 4172, then you need to have another option to be able to actually connect. So we want to be able to change the display protocol. So remember, in some instances, you may find 4172 is blocked. What will happen is it will appear that the user has logged in. It'll go through the login process perfectly fine, but all the user will see is a black screen because the pixels are being blocked on the way out. If that happens, then you want them to disconnect, log off, and then try again with a different protocol. If you've got internal users, you probably wouldn't allow that option. Next, we have our 3D renderer. So this is how the desktop is going to render its graphics. So we can have either automatic, so it's going to choose between software and hardware, or we can hard set software, hardware, or grid virtual GPU. So if we just set that to automatic, that will also allow us to configure the amount of video memory for 3D. So by default, it's 64 meg, and we can scale that all the way up to 512 meg. We can also choose the number of monitors. So depending on what you choose here, we'll allow the different types of monitors or the number of monitors. Then the next maximum resolution of any one monitor. So we can choose the resolution of that monitor. And then finally on the display protocol section, we have HTML access, whether we want to access the desktop via our browser. So we're going to enable that for this particular pool. The next settings we have is for Adobe Flash, and this is for each individual session. So we can control the flash quality, so that's low, medium, or high, and that basically relates to the bandwidth that's being used. So if you have high quality, then clearly it's going to use a lot more bandwidth, or we can just simply set it as do not control. Then finally on the Adobe settings, we have the ability to throttle the flash. Again, that's either disabled, conservative, moderate, or aggressive. So for example, if you go for aggressive, the update interval is then 2,500 milliseconds versus conservative, which is 100 milliseconds, and moderate is 500 milliseconds. So we're going to leave that as disabled. Then the final piece is we have Mirage settings, so we can override our global Mirage settings and connect to a Mirage server. Particularly useful if you are doing full clone dedicated desktops where Mirage could potentially manage the operating system. So we're going to take that tick box out for now because we don't have Mirage in our environment. When we're happy with all those settings, we can click Next to continue. And now we have our provisioning settings. So how are we going to provision these virtual machines? So first of all, we want to enable provisioning, i.e. build the machines when we finish. But also this one's quite important, stop provisioning on error. For example, if you were creating a desktop pool that say had 1,000 machines, you don't want to provision 1,000 machines with an error. You want to provision the first one, work out there's an error, and then stop, rather than go ahead and create the other 999 machines all with the same error. That will then allow me to go back, make the changes that are broken and fix it, and then start the provisioning process again. Next, we need to give our virtual desktop machines a name, so we can specify names manually. Or what we're going to do in this example, use a naming pattern. So it's going to automatically generate the name as we go along. So in this case, we're going to call this Win7 underscore FC for full clones and an underscore, and then we're going to use the curly brackets with an N. And what that means is it's going to insert a number. It does actually tell you over here. So for the first machine it creates, it'll be called Win7 underscore FC underscore 1, and the second one will be underscore 2, underscore 3, and so on, up until the number of desktops that you create. Desktop pool size, so how many machines do we want in this desktop pool? So the maximum number of machines, we're just going to create one for now, and the number of spare machines powered on. So what this means is, say you had 100 machines, so that's the size of my pool in total, but I want to make sure maybe 5 of those are always powered on just to speed up the login process. So these are already powered on, ready to go for the users. So we're just going to set one machine for now. And then we have the provisioning timing. So when is provisioning going to happen? So I can provision machines on demand, i.e. when a user logs in and says, I want a machine, I'll provision it and power it up. And I can say, again, the minimum number of machines. But in this example, as we've only got one, we're going to provision all machines up front. So basically, when we finish the pool configuration, it will create this machine. And as we've only asked for one machine, we'll see a machine created called Win7 underscore FC underscore 1. So if you're happy with all the provisioning settings, we can click Next to continue. Next, we see our storage policy management, and this is where we can say use VMware Virtual SAN or do not. As we don't have Virtual SAN in this environment, then these options will be grayed out. So we're just going to click Next to skip straight past those. So next is our Vcenter settings. So what we're basically doing here is telling the view administrator where the template is for the machine that we want to use to create the pool. So the first thing we need to do is point to that template. So we click on Browse, and we're going to have a look in our Vcenter, and we're going to find all of our templates. So as we created in the previous sections, this Windows 7 desktop template, we're going to select that particular template. So this is where the machines are going to be cloned from. So all our machines within our pool will be cloned from that particular template. Then we need to select the virtual machine location. So we click on Browse again. So where are we going to put this machine when it's built, or the new machines that are built? So we're going to put those in our Horizon View Desktops folder. So we select that and click OK. And then we need our resource settings. So the resource settings is where's it going to run? So we click on Browse. So we're going to choose our PVO cluster. So this is going to be our desktop block rather than our management block. So PVO cluster, click OK to continue. Same for our resource pool. Our resource pool is called PVO cluster. We'll select that. And then the final piece we need to select is the storage. So when I build this machine, where am I going to store it? So again, if this is the desktop block, this may well be stored on SSD storage or an external storage array. We only have a local data store in the example lab, so we're going to just select that and click OK. So once you're happy you've created and configured all your Vcenter settings and we've got the template, folders and resources in place, click Next to continue. Then we see our advanced storage options. So this is where we could choose to use our View Storage Accelerator. So we chose previously not to use that, so we can have the option to configure that. And then also we could have had these blackout times. So when to regenerate storage, we could say don't regenerate storage between these times. Again, we've not got that enabled, so we'll click next to continue. So next we have our guest customization options. So we can choose none, i.e. we're going to go into that desktop and configure it manually. So customize it manually, give it an IP address and do all of those things manually. We could also choose not to power virtual machines on after creation. But what we've got here is we're going to use a customization specification. So basically what that means is we're going to run this customization script. And if we just quickly pop to our vSphere web client, so we can see here we've created this Windows 7 customization script. So if we just edit that quickly and take a look inside, so basically this is our script, registration information, this is configuring Windows with our name and our organization name, the computer name. So basically we're going to use the virtual machine name because the pool settings is going to create that. That's our Win7_FC_1, 2, 3, etc. We can add our Windows license, our administrator password, our time zone information, any scripts post build that we want to run. We can configure the network. We're going to domain join it. Any operating system options. So we want to generate a new SID because we're building a brand new machine. So that's the script we're going to run. So we go back to our View admin console. So we've selected this script, our Win7 customization, and we click next to continue. And then finally, we see our ready to complete screen. So this will contain all of the options we've just configured. And you'll also see at the top here, entitle users after this wizard finishes. So what you could do if you ticked that box, that would go straight into the user entitlement screen. So we can actually allow a user or group of users to have access to this desktop pool. We're going to do that in a later section, so we're going to leave that unchecked for now. So if you're happy with all the settings, we're going to click finish. And there we have our desktop pool created. So here's the ID we called, Win7_persistent_FC for full clone. The display name, what the users are going to see. It's an automated desktop pool. It's going to be created from a machine in Vcenter. It's a dedicated assignment. That is our Vcenter server. Nobody has been entitled to this yet, but the pool is enabled. So once we entitle, somebody could use that particular pool and the desktops within it. So now we've successfully created our Windows 7 full clone dedicated desktop pool.